So, our topic for today is raising children in a racist world. My name is Kim Brasser. Welcome to episode 6 of One Voice Evolving podcast, where we reclaim joy in DEI spaces with guests who are raw, real, and relatable. Today, you're going to meet Tracey Butler-Johnson. Tracey has been drawn to this work for as long as she can remember. And we talk about how she was raised in Brooklyn and how she met her husband and how their family navigated interracial marriage. And then how they are raising their child in a very liberal part of DC. And yet still at the age of 3, the child was exposed to racism. She is known for her TikTok presence, and that was where I first stumbled across her. And she is direct and unapologetically for racial equity and empathy along the way. I love her presentation. I love her smile. And we agree that white people in America need to acknowledge how deeply embedded white supremacy culture is in the United States, and that there are ways to deconstruct that in our families, in our homes, in our organizations, our churches, and our workplaces. And so how do we recognize it? Where do we get support? And how do we undo it in our lifetime? Join us for the conversation. Take notes. There'll be resources at the end, and you can always find the podcast notes and resources on our webpage, onevoiceevolving.com. So we hope you'll join us and enjoy the podcast, and make sure that you like, comment, and share with your friends and family. Enjoy. So Tracey Butler-Johnson, and hi. I saw you on TikTok before I saw Nikki Lanier last year.
Oh, wow.
Okay. Before I even knew what TikTok was, which was really fun. And you were like one of the first For You feeds that came along. And I was so fascinated at the way that you were able with TikTok to navigate and manage less than stellar conversations, or sometimes not directly hateful, but you didn't shy away from difficult conversations, unlike me, who is be still, be quiet, and don't make waves. So
Right.
You've been a little bit of a role model for me. I'm never going to be as bold and brilliant as you are, but I love your presence in that space. I'm curious, what got you started with TikTok?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Thank you for those kind words. I appreciate that so much. Yeah, this TikTok thing, it's interesting. And it's funny, I get a little shy. I like the idea that it's sort of an anonymous audience. And then when it's like real life people talking to me about it, I'm like, ah! But I much prefer that's why I like the platform so much, because you are just sort of a stranger until you're not. And then, you make connections and it's beautiful. But I made just a silly TikTok about make sure you wear your mask. And people went, oh my gosh, it was the most divisive. I couldn't believe it. But I mean, I got thousands and thousands of followers, I think. And I haven't had a clip that viewed since. But it was definitely like over 1 million views. And I was like, wow, this is quite a thing. And then I was like, you know what? I have all these people, and I have something to say. I've always been outspoken about anti-racism. So let's use it for, some good. And my content isn't 100% by far anti-racism or working towards, the work in this journey, but I do try to bring it back around as often as I can. One of the things I like to say is that anti-racism is a verb. So it's an action. It's what are you doing? Yes, it has to do with your inner work and your mind and what you're thinking, feeling, and putting out into the world. But what really matters is, okay, now what? And it doesn't even necessarily mean what am I doing out in the world to help other people. There's so much work that we have to do within ourselves as white people in America. I mean, we've been entrenched in a white supremacist culture from the beginning, and it's impossible to be white in this country and not be impacted by that. And you could be the most well-meaning, well-intentioned, have all of the right things fed to you your whole life, but because you are part of a system that is based on white supremacy, which means there is a hierarchy, and to be white is right in this country, you cannot avoid it. So to dismantle that is action that needs to take place as often as it can. I mean, I like to say every day. For some of us, it's easier to do that work every day. I mean, as you know, am part of a biracial family, so race is a part of our life every single day. But if that wasn't the case, I mean, you have to actually put effort into thinking about these things, because it is a luxury to not have to think about it every day. We can all just sit in our bubbles and just pretend and vote a certain way, once a year and think, oh, I'm doing good for the world. But there's always work to be done. We are never finished with this work. And I think that that's what's really important. You can be working on yourself and making change, and then somebody brings to your attention a point of view you had not considered before, and you go, oh my gosh, I have so much more work to do. And that can be disheartening, but it also is beautiful, because you realize, oh wow, if someone who makes the effort, someone who gets up every day and wants to think about this stuff, someone who goes out into the world and speaks to people, if I have all of this room left, then I know there is room for so many other people to make change. And so that can be highly, highly motivating.
Well, and one of the things that I noticed, particularly on social media, there's this call out culture.
Yeah.
And I noticed it in 2020 when I first started trying to do this work. And if I call somebody out, call them to account in a negative or any kind of a confrontational way, I'm going to be met with defensiveness, which means they're not going to hear 90% of what I'm saying the first round through. And so I like the way that, in my case, even you called me out indirectly, and you may not have even known you were, but I think you did. And I was able to, because of the way you did it, it wasn't so pointed at me. It didn't call me out and put me on blast, that I was able to consider it like you were calling me in. Come in closer for a closer conversation. I can approach that with less defensiveness
Sure.
than the immediate. And I think sometimes in social media we're so busy with gotchas and instant response and keyboard warriors that we forget that there's a relationship and there's a person and there's feelings and there's history behind every story. With your story, I wanted to ask, and we didn't talk about this before. So in your family of origin,
Uh-huh.
what was the system that you grew up in? Was it,
Yeah.
yeah, tell me.
So I grew up outside of Buffalo, New York, in the suburbs of Buffalo, New York, which is a very kind of blue collar town. It was, and it still is, one of the most ethnically both diverse, but also segregated areas in the country. In fact, Buffalo had that shooting in a grocery store about 2 years ago. And I didn't realize when that story came out that one of the reasons the shooter went to that neighborhood is because that was one of the most densely populated with Black people in the state. I don't know if he lived in New York, but he lived a few hours away. And you can still go to neighborhoods, but not only Black and white. There's an Italian neighborhood. There's a German neighborhood. There's still an Irish neighborhood. There's a Polish neighborhood. There's a Puerto Rican neighborhood. There's a Black neighborhood. And that's how we grew up. So my mother is 100% Italian. She would want me to let you know. And but I'm only half. So because she was the first person in our family, in her whole family, to marry a non-Italian. She married a basic white dude, of a European mutt, as we like to say, just all kinds of things, European. And and so that was not a small deal for her growing up. And of course, then I grew up and married a black guy, and it was like, whoa, like I'm just taking the tradition and, moving it forward. But my cultural identity to being Italian American was significant. And all right, so one of the things that I have found in talking with other white people is there isn't a cultural identification to who they are or where they come from. So it's really hard to understand why not having that, or not having access to it. And by that, I mean, if you think about Black Americans and how their cultural background was literally stolen out from under them. And so then all sorts of new things had to be created here, and why that's so important. But as white Americans, when we don't even really have that, many white Americans don't have any kind of ethnic cultural identification. It's really hard. It's sort of a barrier to say, oh no, these sorts of different celebrations are really important for this reason or that reason. But for me, because I had such a strong connection to my Italian American heritage, I mean, even to this day, the things associated with food and traditions and holidays, and there's an Italian festival in Buffalo every year, and my family would have a booth, and we'd sell fava beans, and like roasted with garlic on bread. It's really good. And like it never occurred to me that that was something special that many white European Americans, don't have. But what I learned was that is one of the things that has helped me appreciate, empathize with people who are marginalized, because I myself have a strong cultural identification. I come from a family who understood what it feels like to be marginalized, obviously not to the degree in which Black Americans are marginalized in our country, but still we're able to have empathy for such things. And my mother did the best she could. Some would say I make excuses. I don't know. I do truly believe that she did the best she could. She definitely was we don't see color in this family. And I think in the 70s and 80s, that was the best way we knew how to say, treat everybody the same. And I'm okay with that. I'm no longer okay with it, but I don't think back then, now that we know, oh, wait, we are supposed to appreciate the individual identities of everyone. But that's not where our brains were then. And I think that that's okay. Growth and evolution happen, and we should celebrate that, but we shouldn't punish people who 40 years ago had a belief that was the best you could believe back then, in my opinion. Like, I felt very lucky to have a mom who said, oh, in this house, we don't see color. And I remember being told, and I don't even know how the N word came up, but that is 100% the worst word you could ever, not only do we not say that, but we don't tolerate it. So that's who I came from. And then I'm skipping a couple of key stories, but then I meet my husband at 17, almost 18, and he basically becomes a secret for 6 years because my mom loved him, my dad loved him, my brother loved him, but nobody else knew about him because my mother was convinced that the family would disown us if they knew. I feel like it's a pivotal story where I'm 15 years old. I'm staying with my best friend who lived in Virginia. So she had moved away, and now I'm staying with her in the summer. And for whatever reason, we're at the dinner table, and I don't even remember the conversation, but her father says, well, if she ever came home with a Black man, I would disown her because I just think that that's wrong. And then there's Tracy at the table going, I literally said to him, it's jerks like you that make this world a terrible place. And so then the world sort of stopped because I'm 8 hours away from home, living in the home of this man with my best friend. And she had not been dating Black guy. I have no idea how it came up. But it just came up. And, and so my mom had to get on the phone, and she's all at once super proud of me for standing up. But, oh, you can't say that because you're staying in his house. And so, I felt very activated at the time, and like that, like I was not going to let him say that. Like, there's no way you can say that in my presence and for me to be okay with it. So, I think that was definitely one of the first times that I was able to voice my opinion. And, maybe it wasn't the best way or the best words or, I don't know, but I wasn't sorry. I mean, I did have to apologize, but I can't say that I felt sorry for saying that. And he ended up coming to my wedding. He did not disown me, but I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes hit and run works.
Right?
Sometimes you drop a seed and,
Right. Well, and I think people say things, but they don't really, oh gosh, we could get into so much, Kim. Like, they meet my husband and then they say things to me like, well, I mean, he's not really Black. No, actually he is. He is. He's not only 100% ethnically Black, but he's from Brooklyn. He's like, they mean like, oh, but he's really nice and he's not violent and he's, he's responsible and he's right. Just like millions of other Black men. Like you are feeding into a horrible stereotype that our culture has put out there. And no, he doesn't meet, but he listens to rap. Like he meets a lot of the things. He's not. But it's so frustrating because they wanted, yeah, like, and it's just like, no, actually, this is exactly what a Black man is like. So if you thought anything different, I'm glad he can help you see that they're not all scary and you're like, oh, it's frustrating. And I'm sure he was one of those people who felt that way and who thinks that my husband somehow is the exception because he's kind and generous and responsible and, and it's frustrating because he's not the exception. So that still is frustrating at times, but I intentionally live in a very diverse area for those reasons, to try to be around as many like-minded people as possible, and knowing we were wanted to have a family. I wanted to make sure my children, turned out to be one child, was in an area that was very open and not closed-minded. But given that, I mean, my child still has experienced racism in what I call a super bubble. I mean, we live right outside of Washington, D.C. I think something like 85% of my district voted for Hillary in 2016. Like, I don't know that you could be in a more diverse liberal area. And yet, we've had these experiences. So, I think it's taught me that there just are literally no 100% truly safe spaces, and that's okay. Now that we know, you just always have to be on guard, to be ready for any kind of, sideways comment or, whatever it might be. And while I don't think we've received the, one of the things my mom was always worried about is, as a mixed race couple, are we going to receive violence because of that? And it is true. The true white supremacists hate us more than anybody. Well, frankly, me, because I've stopped my white bloodline and now, I've created a non-white human in the world, but they wouldn't take it out on me. They're going to take it out on him more than likely. But we haven't really experienced that kind of stuff. We've just experienced like your basic things, like my daughter was like 3 years old and was told that she couldn't go to a birthday party because her hair was curly. Um, she brought her little dolly to school and they said, your dolly can't play with our dolly because your dolly has dark skin. We say, listen, when you walk in the door, you're a black kid. And you're going to be treated as such. And this is how our culture here in this country has put out that, you're more likely to commit a crime, that you are more likely to not be as smart as other people, that you are more likely to, not be successful in life. I mean, to the point where when they're out with their friends and they have a pretty diverse friend group, like we now that they're becoming more independent, almost 14, they go more places by themselves. So we'll say things like, okay, who are you with? All right, you're with a bunch of white girls. All right. So if anything goes down, they're going to go after you. They're going to think you're the one who perpetrated. I feel like whatever's happening. So if you see anything happening, if you see one of your friends put something in their pocket, get out of there. Sometimes they have a group where it's another black girl and was it a white girl? And I'll say they're going to go after the darker skinned girl first. Then you're going to be next in line. And then the white girl's going to be the last one they're going to suspect. That's how it is. And it might be harsh and it might be a little overboard, but I don't think it's bad to be over prepared and understand what how the world is going to receive you in the worst possible scenario, right? I mean, they've had beautiful interactions with the world out at malls and stores and things like that, but I don't want them being caught off guard and suddenly being in a situation that can be dangerous, where they need to understand if they are stopped, they are perceived as dangerous, they're perceived as a criminal, and you need to do everything to protect yourself at that point. Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. Do whatever they say if you are still on the scene. But my thing is always get out of there the minute you see anybody go down. That was a lot.
That was a lot. It's a lot because I've been talking with people who are grandparents or parents of mixed race children, either by birth or by adoption. And you have such a daily grasp on how to get down to the bottom line of if anything goes down at the mall, you're going to be the first one who is suspect. There's no fluff. There's no worrying about being politically correct. There's none of that. These are the survival skills my child, as a person of color, needs to know, which is brilliant because those white couples who are adopting, for example, have no clue even that they're swimming in white supremacy, much less how to raise a black child in that.
Right.
This is not on our topic to talk about, but I would love you, who also are an educator with middle school age people, I would love to know if you have tips for less experience. I have a variety of gender and color, and in our family, extended family, my goodness, we have 23 grandchildren or something. But I would love those tips because when our biracial children, for example, and I'm, later in life marriage, so they're not my blood children, when they bring their families, and I live in New England, we're talking white bread country up here.
Yep.
I'm on guard for watching people's reaction as we go into places or that. I don't know what it's like to do that automatically every day. And I don't know how defended I need to be going in. Help me out here.
Yeah, it's funny because as I hear you say that, I wear the biggest pair of rose-colored glasses in the world about practically everything. But at the same time, I am vigilant about the environment. So, It's interesting. My mom used to say to me when we'd be out, and this was before we had a child, but we'd be out with my husband, and she would say to me, I don't know how you do it. So many people just stare at you guys, and I would be so self-conscious. I don't know how you have the courage to go out. And I'm like, Mom, I don't even know what you're talking about. Like, I don't notice. And I think the reality is it's probably a combination of there was nothing to notice.
Mhm.
And so my mom being super self-conscious, like, oh my gosh, is everybody looking at us? And then if there was anything to notice, that it wasn't really that big of a deal, because I'm also the first person to say, oh yeah, the reason why that person said that thing is because of racism. It's because we're a Black family. And people will go, no. And I'll go, 100%. And I wish I could think of a good example. Maybe one will come to me. But at the same time, I'm like, no, everybody's beautiful and it's going to be great. I'm also keenly aware when it's not. I don't know how I know the difference. One thing that I will say, and I'll try to narrow in and answer your question a little bit more pointedly, but, I've been with my husband for 31 years, almost 32 years, almost 25 years of marriage next month. And I've never, and I say this with a clean, clear, sincere heart, I've never experienced any kind of negative contact, conflict, interaction with a Black woman. The stereotype is, and I've had other women who are white women who are married to Black men say to me, oh, isn't it so hard though? I mean, the Black women get so angry, and I say to them, I've never experienced that. I don't know. I don't I don't I don't know how to I definitely can't commiserate with you on that. It 100% has not been my experience. And I think it's really about how you enter the situation. As a member of a mixed race family, I've had people say to me, they find out my husband's Black and they'll say, oh my God, you seem like such a nice girl. Literally. Oh, okay. Okay. Like how am I supposed to respond to that? Which I would well, I don't consider that a microaggression. I consider that blatant aggression. But I think most of the time their ignorance is popping out in ways that if they saw themselves like on a hidden video, they would most likely be mortified. But I don't mind when someone is just being honest. I'd much rather you be authentic and tell me what you're thinking than try to cover it up and like make sure you're trying to say the right thing. I look at microaggressions as an opportunity to educate. Mm-hmm. When white women use the term girl, oh, girl, please. Oh my gosh, and I say it a lot. I'm going to tangent just for a second. I say it a lot. And then I watched the movie Harriet, which about Harriet Tubman, and the master was calling her into the house and he'd be like, come on, girl, come on. Like, and the use of the term girl towards a Black woman was so horrific that I was like, okay, I have to stop saying that, because the origin of that is that. And oh my gosh. Now, I'm someone who's always used the term girl. Like sometimes I use it with guys. Like it's one of the terms that I use. However, if you notice, most white women that I've observed only use it with Black women. And to me, that's a huge microaggression.
So on social media,
yeah.
do those comments ever thread into a meaningful conversation, or do they tend to get hijacked?
I think they can, but I think it's difficult. As you were saying earlier, people are so easily triggered. And as I was saying to you also earlier, I like to listen to myself when I get triggered. I like to, the minute I am having any kind of exchange, whether it's online or frankly in real life, the minute my blood starts to boil or I feel like defensive, insulted, I know that something has activated in me, and that's a place that I need to deeply search, take a look at, and ask myself a ton of questions about. Because why is that bothering me? Why is that? What did they call me out on that I now have feelings about? Because, oh gosh, you got me. I've been found out. It's such a feeling of incredible insecurity and oh my gosh, I'm now going to be judged. Oh my gosh, somebody thinks this about me. And you know, if it doesn't apply to you, it wouldn't bother you. I once had an administrator say to me, a principal.
You were so direct. I love that.
And she said to me, I was like, we were trying to identify a student, like there was something that happened. And I don't even know if it was even that bad of a thing that happened, but I was like, who was it? And they were like, I don't know. It was about this tall. And I was like, okay, black, white. Oh, I don't see color. Lady, you observed the human. You saw this person. I'm not asking you to attach characteristics to this person's color. I just would like to be able to identify who this human being was. Were they lighter or darker than me? Can we start there? Like, it is helpful to know the color of someone's skin when I'm trying to find them in a crowd of 400 children. Like, this isn't a judgment against you. This is like, it's just incredible to me. So if you literally say you don't see color, I'm just like, okay, then open your eyes. But the point is, if that activates you, then that's what you have to explore. Oh my gosh, I've learned so much from people on TikTok. I feel like I have grown immensely from the knowledge and experience of other people on TikTok.
So how do you feel? I mean, what do you think their experience of racism and how they're going to navigate and how they are navigating, or even compared to you when you were that age and now as an educator, has it shifted over the decades, or are you seeing the same kind of things now that you saw when you were that age?
A lot of people, white people, felt we were a post-racial society. You know, civil rights happened. Cool, we're done with that. Excellent. Everyone has the same rights, so now we're good. And, oh, look, we even elected a Black president, right? But that certainly activated a ton of folks who did not feel that that was okay. So now you have more people talking about racism, which sometimes gives people the idea that there's more racism now. But I don't think that's true. Then go to 2020, and not that George Floyd was the first. I mean, Trayvon sits in my head as just heartbreaking more than anyone for whatever reason. And that wasn't even a police officer. But I think witnessing the murder of that man in a time when we didn't have a lot of other things to focus on, because we had just gone into the pandemic, it made people go, oh my gosh, this world, what a terrible world. I've had people say to me, oh, I can't imagine raising kids right now in this world. It's so awful. And I'm like, no, the world is not awful. You are now aware that some horrible stuff has been happening all along. The fact that you're now aware of it doesn't make the existence of it any worse. Statistically, it's actually much better. From a kid point of view, our kids today, and even I was in the same school for 22 years. So I really got to see the evolution of a lot of stuff, right? And our kids today are more compassionate, more aware, more community based, like not just what's good for me, but what's good for everybody. I mean, it's night and day compared to just 20 years ago. So we are on such a positive trajectory. I see it in my child and their friends. Phrases, outlooks, things that I wish I could think of a great example, but I'll say things sometimes and my child and their friends will look at me like, I cannot believe you just said that, because that is so unacceptable. And it's not just coming from a place of being politically correct. Like it is, I think, amongst our generation, it's coming from a place of that's not kind or compassionate, so we're not going to say or do that. And it just stops me in my tracks and it makes me go, oh my gosh, I'm so thankful for this generation because you guys are amazing. They are such amazing humans. So I have a ton of hope. I know I got on those big rose-colored glasses. I get it. That's who I am. But I see evidence of things being so much better. And I do have a belief that things get real bad before they get better. And maybe that's where we are. But even in the day-to-day, the fact that we're aware of all the atrocities is one of the ways that we're going to get rid of them forever, right? I mean, bad stuff's been happening and way worse stuff than what we see if you go back over the hundreds of years, right? I mean, I think we're in the best possible place that we can be. I have a lot of hope for our country, believe it or not. I just think we're in a great place because I think we're building great humans.
Okay, so we're going to wrap, and I give you an opportunity to give us three resources or things that you think might help. I want to start with your TikTok handle. Where do we find you?
Okay, I am at Positively Tracey, Tracey, is how you find me on TikTok. I think you'll find me. I'm not really on Instagram, so TikTok's the place to be. So at Positively Tracey over there. I imagine, Kim, that you promote Dr. Nikki Lanier as much as you can here on your podcast, but being under her brilliance and guidance is a must. And then in general, and I'm a TikTok girl, so I'm going to live in that world, but seek out Black creators, a wide variety of Black female and male creators where you can learn other points of view. Being Black in America is not a monolith. I mean, there are things we need to keep in mind in terms of history, but every individual person, when we think about it, goes, oh yeah, every individual person does have their own experience. And learning as much as you can about other people's experience in this world is something that is critical. So, but there's some really great creators that you can continuously learn from. And if you're on this journey with anti-racism, you need to have some kind of mentors in your life to help guide you. For me, that's been Black females. I have a couple others. Desiree Stevens is another great woman. She's on TikTok and on Facebook, and she has a group that she puts together. And sometimes we meet on Zoom calls, and she allows us to just kind of talk and be very real about different experiences. So I would recommend her as well.
That support matters. It absolutely matters. Tracey, thank you so much for spending the time with us today.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
To continue the journey online with you and meet
you.
Yep,
totally.
The next Rare Woman Collective event.
I know.
Fabulous. Thank you
so much.